am Noopur, your host, and today I'm back with another interesting interview. And today I have Dr. Bob Schatz with us. Hi, Bob, how are you?
Hi, Noopur. How are you doing?
I'm good, and I would like to tell a little bit about you. Bob has over 40 years of experience in the IT industry, leading software, systems, and organizational development. He's a leader in successfully implementing agile development techniques such as Scrum and XP and driving cultural changes in the organization. Really good to have you with us, Bob, and looking forward to some great insights from you out of this discussion.
Looking forward to it.
So, I'll begin with a very important question because we are talking about the future of workplaces now. And we cannot deny the fact that the pandemic has changed a lot of things for us, and the future demands the offices configured in new ways so that it can support the employees. What are some of the major changes that are required according to your experience, Bob?
Yeah, well, I mean, I think we all agree that was a catastrophic event, right, globally. So that's kind of a once in a lifetime type of thing. And you've got changes. People were forced into something that we had been debating about for many years prior to that, right? So, working from home was never seen as something that was going to be, widespread. It was special cases. People had special needs that couldn't get into a workplace. So it was special. And then we were all forced into it, right? So we got to all have to had that experience of making that change, and that involved all of us that are doing the work as well as management. And so from that aspect, the physical office, really didn't exist, at that point. So we got a taste of what it would be like if there was no place to go, right? That you work from home. And now we're starting to see the sort of adjustment. So you go from one extreme to the other, and now you've got to come back, right? So you've got everybody is affected by this. You have people that are, the employees doing the work, you have management, and then you also have the physical facilities. And you can see that we don't know where this is going to land. Everybody keeps talking about a hybrid, and some companies are demanding that people come in. Other companies are like, we don't care where people are working from. So it's not like consistent. And you have big companies like Amazon now is, in the latest news, they want everybody back in the office. You have companies like Atlassian who, builds like Jira. They're saying we don't care where people are working from. It doesn't matter. And there's all kinds of political pressure as well because it affects economies. It affects, where money is spent, and so it's a much bigger problem, and it's very complex. So I think if companies have some desire to get people back in the office, it's not going to be by mandate because that stuff usually does not work. You can get compliance from people, but you're not going to get engagement from people, and that's the problem. So I think from both a physical aspect and a attracting employees aspect, you're going to have to start creating workplaces that are attractive for people to go to, right? In other words, there is some benefit for me getting out of my house, leaving my family, commuting, possibly, some people commute like over an hour to get to work, right? So you got a couple hours that you're commuting. It has to be worth it to go in, right? You're sacrificing time that you now have realized that you would rather be at home. Or you have other people that don't effectively work at home. They need to get out. So it's not like a one or nothing, a zero or one solution. And so I think, from a company perspective, they're really going to have to start focusing on, both physical space and activities that go on there that attract people. Like when I get up in the morning, I want to go to the office because I'm going to interact with other people, or there's going to be an event, or there's going to be some special thing. But I don't want to be locked in where I have to go every day, because we've proven that that isn't necessary. So I think that's going to be the big challenge. I don't know if anybody knows where it's going to go. I think as you read people's opinions, and there's a lot of writing, it's all over the place because nobody really knows. It was a shock to the system. We learned to do things that we wouldn't have done for probably the next 15 years. And now we have to deal with it, right? We have to deal with the sort of finding the middle ground, and it's not going to be the same for everybody.
Absolutely, it's not gonna be the same for everybody. I totally agree to that. And moving on to my next question, Bob, which is sort of connected with my previous question, in terms of bringing changes, how can we encourage change and innovation happening naturally in a workplace?
Yeah, I think again, and I think that's closely tied to that first question, but again, I think you have to be intentional about uh, sort of designing the activities that go on. You have to sort of think in a bigger picture view of what kinds of events, what kind of things do we do in the office that would make people want to come in, or it's worth their time. Things like uh, solving some interesting problem, or working through some innovation, or something that is difficult to do over video conferencing, where it's not just normal interaction. It might require some more innovative, collaborative session, and we can give people a meal, have lunch or whatever, make it more social, and that tends to get people more engaged. Maybe getting customers that have a problem to actually come in and talk about a problem they're having, or maybe having team go out to a location to see something. You got to get people to um, get tied into a problem set, right? Like something that's interesting to them. And I think that's what's going to happen. You're going to have to really, and from a management and leadership perspective, almost like produce events, right? It's like you're producing an event that engages people and keeps them interested, right? And I think that's what it's going to take.
Yeah, that this is a good insight that you have shared, Bob. And one more advice I would like you to share for the leaders on sorting out through different kinds of confusions, and to better say it, a lot of confusions, and focus on what keeps people engaged and get products out of the door.
Yeah. Well, I think for keeping people engaged, one of the things that I have, well, a couple of things that I've really worked with clients over the years, and have done with my organizations. I think there's two things that are like critically important in projects. The first is providing context. That you can't have people just say, well, here's the thing you need to do, go do it. It's almost like, here's the order, fill the order. There's really not a lot of thought and problem solving going on there. And so I think, problem solvers really require context. Really understanding, here's the current state where these people have a problem. We've got some idea for some high level idea of a solution, and we're trying to create this, sort of future state where that problem doesn't exist anymore. So, things like product vision, outcome goals, understanding constraints, really trying to give people the full scale scenario of what the problem set is, and having them see the work they're doing in that context. So that's the first thing that keeps people engaged. And the second thing is getting customers engaged, users. And a lot of the agile practices were all based on that. They were all based on the fact that we recognized that we were creating products that had a lot of features that people never used, and there were a lot of features they needed that we never put in. And it was all based on this idea that you would define it all up front through requirements, and then just have a team of people execute the requirements, fill the order, and deliver the product. But it wasn't working, right? It wasn't consistent. It wasn't working. So a lot of the agile practices were built on fast iterations with customers giving feedback as you go. And what I found first is that that's sometimes very difficult for people to take on. They're afraid. There's a fear about what customers might think about what we're doing. But you have to overcome that fear, because the benefit is that once you get customers engaged and start working with you and giving you feedback, you can very quickly adjust where you go to build a better product. And actually, the better product typically has less features and requires less work than what we were doing before. And that's one of the benefits you get out of a good agile practice, is reducing the amount of work done. In fact, it's one of the agile principles is, the principle of simplicity, which is maximizing the amount of work not done. And I think sometimes people miss that a little bit, and they don't have it, so they get back in that order filling and wind up in similar situations they were before. So I always found that by providing context and engaging the customers, you get a much better engagement from people. They feel like they're actually solving a problem for somebody, and they're thinking of better and better ways to do it. And those things combined help us get product out the door. And there is a pressure to do that more frequently. There's a heavy demand for products and changes, and we're still figuring out how to be able to respond to those things.
All right, and see, we are talking about the agile transformations as well here, Bob. And one of the most important part of it is retrospectives, right?
Yeah.
And my next question to you is, how can we improve these retrospectives for future, considering the kind of changes we are expecting to come in the coming years?
Yeah.
So how can we improve the process?
Well, the retrospectives were there. Mostly that's a term we use in Scrum. And the idea of the retrospective is to have a sort of internal look at what a team has done within a context of a time box, and what their process, how their process works. So really trying to improve the process, which typically is captured in a definition of done. So we always look at the end and say, all right, how did that work? Was there anything we're doing that was wasteful? Is there anything we should be doing that we weren't doing? Is there any way to improve on the process that we're using? And that's part of it. The other part is, how did we work as a team, right? How did we interact and communicate and collaborate? And these are things that can always be improved. And continuous improvement, everybody loves to say that, but it means continuous improvement. You have to keep looking at what you're doing. And so retrospectives are important in that we look at the right thing. Now, a lot of times they don't get designed and facilitated properly, because they can tend to be the team looks at it as an opportunity to complain about things that happened during the sprint, outside forces, what people did or did not do for them during the sprint. So they tend to point their finger out. But we have to realize that, first of all, those things are obstacles. Those are obstacles that should have been raised during the sprint. That's why we have that part of the daily Scrum. And the retrospective is really to point the finger inwards, like to look at ourselves, to look inside of things that we can control, not what happened on the outside. So I think first, how do we make them better, is that the people that are facilitating them in Scrum, as Scrum Masters, really need to boost up their skills of understanding what the retrospective is, how to design them, how to facilitate them, and to continuously improve them. And that's what we try to point them towards when we're training them. But often, the mistake that is made is, and it's in a way a little bit of the fault of how we describe the the retrospective, there often when you read about it, you'll see the description is 3 questions. What worked, what didn't work, and what are we going to do to improve it? And the unfortunate part is some people think that that is the retrospective, that those 3 questions are what you use. But really, it's not. That was meant to be the intent of the retrospective, not the content. And the content really has to be designed. And there's so many resources out there, books like Agile Retrospectives by Esther Derby and Diana Larson. There's websites, there's templates and tools like Mural and Miro, and there's, you look at retrospective, there's people that have all kinds of templates out there, and ideas and content and activities that you can use. The best way to do these is to be creative, to be intentional, to for Scrum Masters or whoever's facilitating it to really learn what it is, the structure of them, different activities, and make it, again, as we're talking about, make it engaging. Don't make it a burden for a team, like, oh no, we have to go through another retrospective, right? And if you don't go deep like that, then it just becomes this repetitive, unnecessary thing where we just say things like, oh, that sprint went really well, we worked really good together, and we wouldn't change anything, right? And that becomes the retrospective. And it's just, there's nothing there, it's empty. So you really do have to be a good facilitator and a designer to really go in and use the content and design a good retrospective. And I think that's, if we do that, then the team responds to that because they appreciate the fact that somebody actually put it together. But if there's no effort, then they're just going to see it as a burden. Like, why are we doing this? And so I think we need to do that. That's how we get better.
All right, and I think the most important aspect would be to understand the intent. As you said, people think those 3 questions are the content of the retrospective.
Yeah,
If you
yeah.
reach the intent.
We actually have in Scrum, we have that problem with 2 events, and the 2 events are the daily Scrum and the retrospective. They were both described with questions, and they both have the same problem in that when people look at it, they think that, oh, the daily Scrum is you ask the 3 questions, and the retrospective is, and it wasn't either of those. Those were both meant to be intent, but that, looking back, we probably should have done a better job of describing it without using questions. And that was probably the mistake. So, so you always look
Yeah,
back and try to improve things. Too late now, but that would have been an improvement many years ago.
I agree. And we now coming to we are now coming to the most important aspect of leading in an organization, that is hiring, right?
Yeah.
And the great attrition we are all hearing about, it is making the hiring process even harder. How do you recommend to address this issue in today's time?
Yeah. It's really interesting. I typically can gauge the job market by LinkedIn. I mean, it's kind of weird, but like you see your feeds and you see people that are, laid off or they're open to work or they just got a job. So you're seeing a lot of changes going on now. And people are, it's much easier to switch jobs now than it used to be, right? It's mostly virtual and it's mostly automated. So people are, it's much, you don't have to take days off to go interview, and it's not like a whole big thing anymore. It's kind of easy. So you have a lot more fluidity in the market. People are choosing where they want to work rather than having to work somewhere. And there's tremendous opportunity because of the virtual nature that you can work for companies that you wanted to work for, but didn't want to move, right? You didn't want to relocate, yourself and your family. So now you have opportunities to do that. On the other hand, you have companies over the last, 8 months or so have also had layoffs. So we also had some downsizing or right sizing, whatever you want to call it. And so that's why there's a lot of fluidity. So, it's some of it's attrition, some of it's choosing, some of it's companies laying off. So it opens up the job market. So there's a lot more going on. And so companies, when they post a job, they're getting a lot more candidates, and people are, looking for places they want to go. So, this becomes, you either have a market where the employees have the upper hand, or you have a market where the employers have an upper hand. So I think we're kind of in between right now. This is like one of those, we're sort of figuring, it's like a balance, and it's like sort of shifting a little bit back and forth. Um, but I don't think it's any different than it has ever been, when you're looking at hiring. Every company wants to hire the best talent, right? But not all the best talent wants to work for those companies. So you have to, just like anything else, you have to be able to attract and retain talent. And so all the things we talked about so far in terms of physical workspace, how we work, where we work, the context of what we work, what is being provided to us. We look at those things now a little harder. It's not just, oh, I really want to work there. Salary's good and they have benefits. It's more. It's like people are looking deeper now. What's this going to be like? How am I going to like this? Am I going to be able to split my time between home and work? Like, what can, they're looking for quality of life. And so I think companies, if you want to attract the right talent, you're going to have to work at it. You're going to have to provide these things. And, we're going to see if companies like Amazon mandate people coming back in the office and a majority of their people don't, what do people do? Do they leave Amazon and go somewhere else? So as those things happen, that kind of defines what employers really need to do to get people that they want, right? You're going to have to make adjustments, and that can be hard for people. A lot of people are not used to that.
All right, and I would like to know from you, because there are different generations of agile practitioners, leaders working together. How can we fill the generational gap for effective change management and organizational transformation?
Yeah. So this is interesting because we had a little talk with the session we have, my son and I, doing the generational gap in agile practices. And it's important to understand, this is again, an interesting time. This is the first time in history that we've had 5 generations working in the workplace together at the same time. That usually does not happen. So it's an interesting challenge because every generation has different viewpoints of how things should be done, and as time goes on, it shifts, right? So the older generations start to exit the workplace, the newer generations start picking up, and it shifts the thinking. So I mean, that's just a natural sort of progression. And the unique part is that you have 5 generations in there today. So again, all these questions are great because they're kind of all interrelated. And when you start thinking about how do we, if as leaders, how do we create an environment that attracts people? Well, what I would think of as somebody who's 60 plus years old is, to attract people is going to be different than what somebody who's 30 some years old would think would attract people. I'm going to have different viewpoints, and that's where we have a little bit of conflict. Is that obviously the leadership is going to be the older generations, and they're thinking like, oh, these people need to get back in the office. I don't know what they're doing. I would never work from home all the time. We just had to. So they're thinking different. Where youngers are like, hey, why do I have to be in the office? It's such a waste of time. Nothing happens there. I'm in meetings all day. I don't need to be in those. I'm unable to get my work done. I have to commute 2 hours, right? I don't like this. And so you have these generational differences, and we're going to have to find a way to adapt, because if you're going to attract people, you're going to have to produce an environment of the people you want to attract, not what you think. My generation, we would never do that. Like that's not going to work. You can't just force your old thinking on new generations. It doesn't work like that. And when those people were younger, right, like me, we were being told things like, "Wow, that's not right. Like we're not doing it that way." So this always happens, and I think it's just a natural sort of conflict that has to be resolved. And it takes time, and it's going to take some people to change the way they think on both ends of this. And again, I think it's just a matter of time. We're going to have to figure out like where this all lands. I don't. It's to me, having studied organizations and behavior, this is one of the most interesting times. These last few years have been just it's like an experiment that was being run, and you're just saying like, how is this going to all play out? Because you don't know where it's going to go. It's never happened before, so it's all new, and it's just interesting to see the dynamics of how everybody takes positions, and then you have to kind of figure it out. So I think everybody would be it would be a benefit to stay tuned into that, and read articles and read news stories about what different companies are doing, and try to see how it all plays out, because it's going to be interesting lessons to learn. So keep your eyes open.
Absolutely. So thank you for answering all these questions, Bob. We are now moving on to the next round, which is going to be a quicker one. So I'll be asking you some rapid fire questions. So are you ready for that?
Yes, I am ready.
All right. So any dish that you cook the best?
I do not cook, so I'm going to go with uh, heating up leftovers.
That's interesting.
I have not been known for my cooking ability, so boiling water, making pasta might be the best thing I could do.
All right. Do you have any favorite stationery?
Well, obviously, it would be Post-it notes. So it's always I have Post-it notes everywhere, as you can see over my shoulder, and I'm notorious for keeping constantly checklists. I always have little notes with checklists on them, and
Mm-hmm.
I'm just like a checklist person. So it's everything. I just like to get ideas down and then just check them off. So
Mm-hmm.
makes me happy.
All right. Any book that you're looking forward to read, which you haven't read yet, but you're quite looking forward to it?
Yeah, actually, we were talking about retrospectives, and this book, Agile Retrospectives, and Esther and Diana are working on the second edition of that. So the first edition came out many years ago, and became
Yeah.
sort of that was the go-to thing to read to understand retrospectives. And I still recommend when I teach people be Scrum Masters that you read that book. So I'm really looking forward to the second edition, because I know they've been working really hard on it, and taking all the lessons that we learned from the beginning and trying to fold that in. I think that's going to be interesting. And that's going to be coming out, I think, the beginning of next year. So early part of next year.
All right. Also be waiting for it.
Yeah, that's a good one.
Yeah. And is there anything, Bob, that never fails you to laugh?
Well, I laugh at a lot of things, mostly people and how they behave, including myself. I would like to laugh at myself sometimes. But as far as content, I'm always good for the show The Office. Um, I can watch any episode of that, and that usually gets me laughing. So, but it's
Yeah.
kind of tied to what I do too. It's like just the behavior of people in an office at work is always
Mhm.
extremely humorous to me. Always has been, and
Yeah.
it just seems like I don't know, it's kind of funny. So I get a good laugh out of that.
That's nice. That's nice to know. And we have spent a lot of time discussing so many aspects of future of workplace. And now I would like to conclude all that by asking you your advice to build a good foundation for the future of workplace work.
Yeah. Um, I think this is the same advice I have been given for a long time, and it took me a little while in my career to understand it. But I think learning is the key practice in this business that you're in. Like, if you're in any kind of problem solving, product development, it's constantly changing, not just the techniques and tools and all that stuff, but just the overall environment in which we do things. And you have to keep learning. You have to just constantly go at it. And I know in the first half of my career, I did do quite a bit of that, but I never took it that seriously. And then I realized later on, it was actually after we did one of the early, sort of implementations of Scrum, how important it is to keep learning because there was so much that I had to figure out while we were doing it, and that's when I started getting back into it, and then went back to school and everything. So I really value uh, constant learning, always pushing yourself. Never think that you got it all, that you know it. When you start to think that way, you're kind of going down. And so for each person, you should always have a little like a learning plan for yourself. Over the next 6 months, what am I trying to do? Set goals. Get the right materials or go to classes or whatever you can do. There's so much free stuff out there and low cost options for learning. It's so like available now. And for organizations, I think they have to create learning opportunities for people. You have to invest in people. And a lot of companies pulled back on that because of the fluid, nature of people moving jobs. So the thought was, well, I'm going to bring somebody in here. They're probably going to leave anyway. So why am I going to invest in training them? Right? That's the thought. But really, that's the reason they're leaving is because they didn't have the opportunity. They're not learning. They're not growing, and you're not giving them opportunities to do so. You're treating them like some kind of factory worker that got a job and they're going to leave. So I don't need to train them. I think that's, a mistake. Um, you have to invest in people. And even though people might leave, by doing that, you're attracting other people. So if it's going to be fluid, then create an environment where people learn. And while they're there with you, they give their best to you, you give your best to them. And when you look at engaging and attracting good, talent, that's how you're going to make it happen. So learning.
That's, yeah, that's amazing. That's amazing, Bob. This was a very insightful discussion, and I'm sure the audience is also going to enjoy this.
Oh, great! It was great talking to you too. Great questions.
Thank you, and look forward to work with you again sometime in future.
Yeah, very good. It was nice seeing you again.